Hello and welcome back to Refractions. I am Stephen Mallon, your host, and I am very excited that we have the director of the Oxford Photo Festival, Katy Barron, joining us today. So, hello, Katy, and thank you for being here.
Hi, Stephen. It's lovely to meet you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, if you can just tell us a little bit, like, what is your history with photography?
I'm an art historian by training. I went to the Courtauld Institute, which is part of London University, and then I went to Oxford University. And then I worked in museums as a painting curator. And then old master paintings, actually, French painting. And I then sort of had an epiphany. And I just thought, I don't really know why I'm spending all my time with dead artists. This doesn't make any sense to me, and it's pointless and irrelevant. And photographs had always attracted me. I'd kind of done a bit of freelance curating, and I left that world behind. And I actually went to work for a gallery called Purdy Hicks in London that didn't really show photography. And we started working with some really great photographers, Susan Durgis, Tom Hunter, some great people. I started curating on the side, and my photographic journey sort of took off from there, really. I curated some shows in China. I did some consulting. I've done a lot of curating and dealing at the same time, sort of one to pay for the other, really. Always working with living art, well, not always, but mostly working with living photographers. I also chair an organization in Brixton in South London. It's an institution that uses photography to kind of help young people in particular skill up, get into education. It uses photography in kind of ways to help people kind of move forward in their lives, really, in many ways. So I think for me, photography has power, it has meaning. It's a cliche to say it's a democratic medium, but it is a democratic medium. It has a range from the great art to something, you and I do every day. And I think that's what I like about it, actually. Um, so yes, after doing various different things, bit of, dealing, curating, all these sorts of things, I find myself currently the director of Photo Oxford, which is a biannual photography festival in the great city of Oxford, which I think many people will have heard of because of its, great famous universities. But it is in fact a city that has an industrial heritage. It's a wonderful, diverse place. And this will be the fifth edition of this festival. And I became the director about a year ago. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
So,
Thank
this
you.
would be the first, like, actual happening of the festival since you became director, right? Pretty exciting.
Yes. Yes, it will be. So I was a trustee. It's a charity, a tiny little charity, and I was a trustee for some time, and then I stepped down from that role and applied to be the director because I just felt it. I knew enough about it, and I just really wanted to have the opportunity to lead it myself and perhaps shape it a little bit and take it forward. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I don't think I told you this when I first reached out, but I initially had contacted because I think the job had shown up on a job posting that I follow. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I can't do this remotely, but I just wanted to check. um, and it was and you were the one that responded like 4 or 5 months later, and you're like, nope.
No, no, I mean I don't live in Oxford. I was just saying to you, it's just over an hour away from London, and I'm going to end up having to live there, I think, in the run up to the festival. I spend a great deal of time there, actually, very happily. But yeah, it's definitely not a remote role.
Yeah, even for you.
Even for me, no, even for me.
Okay, so that was one of the questions, I guess, because I didn't realize that. So Oxford's not that far from London. I mean, it's a separate city, but an hour and a half doesn't sound too. It's like you can make it to the festival as a day trip if you live or visiting London.
Absolutely. It's a perfect place to come for the day. And so our festival, which opens on the 25th of October, and that opening weekend, we hope that a lot of people will come for the day on the opening weekend or any of the other weekends that the festival runs. It runs for 3 weeks. And obviously, given that people hopefully will come on the weekend, we'll probably have events and things going on for visitors. And we will have a map. And in fact, the creation of a good map is a real challenge. The city, like all cities, well, it's not on a grid, Oxford. It's a medieval city at its heart. And so the street pattern is quite complex. There's a center and there are sort of spines going out from the center and a number of different bus companies, and it's quite complicated to get around. So a good map is key. And I'm going to have to find a really great map designer actually to help me with that. Because I want everybody to see as much as they can, probably in a day, as you say, if they've come from elsewhere. And there will be around 10 main exhibitions in the festival, but I doubt even if you had a bike, you could probably get around them all in a day.
Oh wow.
It would be a bit of a challenge. You
Yeah.
probably could, but you wouldn't see them for very long. Uh, you'd be
Be
dashing.
exhausted.
Yeah, but I mean, I having obviously visited many photo festivals myself, often the way that you find your way around is a huge can be a huge challenge, actually, I think. And maps on phones, I think, rarely work. You want a printed map.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, so that's something I'm thinking about very carefully already, actually.
Yeah, it's the navigation aspect is it's a challenge, right? Especially if you're for somebody that's like me who's not familiar with the city, if I'm coming there for the festival and I want to make sure I get to this exhibition, but then the talk is at this amphitheater and I don't really understand, the navigation. I mean, it's a lot easier with, Google Maps these days, but it still can be frustrating if something's wrong on the printed version or the digital, and you're trying to, maximize seeing everything.
Exactly. So, I mean, oddly, that sort of thing, even though it's so far away from photography, but it's just really, really important for the kind of experience of our visitor, I think.
For
So
sure.
yeah, any great map designers are very welcome to send me an email.
I don't know if we have any listening right now, but if I think of anybody, I'll let you know. So what is the theme of the festival?
So the theme of the festival is truth. Which is a theme that we came up with about a year ago, actually. And I think it was a very apposite choice and something that seems increasingly relevant, particularly with regards to photography, but just in general, it's something that, I think we're all very conscious of thinking about and is a deep concern for all of us. So we will be looking at truth in photography in a number of different ways. For instance, I was just telling you beforehand, we're hoping to show a new body of work by British photographer Edmund Clark. Hopefully, I mean, this is only a fingers crossed thing at this stage. This piece of work is going to be published by the great Steidl later this summer, but let's see. And Ed has spent some time going through public records of the US Defense Department spending. And I don't know if you realize, but everything is public. All government, US government spending is available for you to see. So Ed and his partner, his collaborator, have analyzed millions and millions of records, Defense Department spending records, and they've created what is effectively an encyclopedia of spending. And you can search it by place, you can search it by type of spend, and it is illustrated using Defense Department photographs. So the online photographic resource, which is available again to the public,
Yep.
which is, I suppose one might say, propaganda. They're very positive images shared by the Defense Department, understandably. And the project dates, the spend dates from 9/11 to the departure of the US and Europe, the departure from Afghanistan. So it's
Wow.
that period of time. So I guess you could say it's about the war on conflict.
And so
And it is
these are going to be
manifestation, sorry, it's a manifestation of truth, geopolitical truth through spend.
fascinating. So he didn't photograph any of these objects then. He curated by like the research and then collaboration and design, like not crowdsourcing because it's not crowd. He's
No,
going to the like,
it's sort of data analysis,
yeah.
huge amounts of data analysis. Um, and yes, there are no photographs by him in it at all. Um, so we are at the moment thinking very hard about how to manifest this in an exhibition in a way that is visually compelling, and it will be by pulling out individual spends. There are categories. It's hard to talk about it because it's not released yet, but there are some absolutely bizarre things that inevitably burger buns, llamas,
Llamas?
llamas, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And it's billions and billions of dollars. So
That sounds like so much fun and such a challenge on thinking about how to visualize for the audience in a compelling fashion. Because I mean, you can blow them up, right? I mean, you can make giant, vinyl prints and install them, but it seems like there's something else to be done with that information.
exactly. It's how you convey the information in a way that sort of you can understand the scale of this kind of the scale of the power. Actually, it's about the scale of power, its reach, and yeah, what it means, I think. And the exhibition will have a sort of introductory section where we are very lucky to be working with a private collection called the Insight Collection, which is a major British collection of conflict photography. And so we will start with a number of images taken by journalists who've been embedded, in those locations during the war on conflict. So the public will see the more kind of obvious side of that conflict in a way, as seen by journalists on the ground, boots on the ground, if you like. So there'll be two different manifestations, perhaps, of the same idea.
And those two are both journalistic projects. So is there a journalistic kind of focus on the work that you show, or is it all encompassing, like including like street
It,
photography and fine art and
the plan is that it's all encompassing, absolutely, and not just journalistic at all. So, for instance, talking about artificial intelligence, obviously we have to think about that if we're talking about truth. We will be showing new work by an American artist called Haley Morris Cafiero, who has built with a data scientist, she's built her own employability program. And many of the large employers, they use facial scanning as part of their kind of the early stages of selection of people. Um, so they actually look at people's faces and decide whether or not they are suitable candidates, um, which is really
I'm shaking
shocking.
my head in disbelief. I did not know this.
Yes, it is. It's really shocking. And so she has built basically a copy of one of this employment software, and she manipulates her face. And as she does so, you can see the metric intelligence or powerfulness or kindness change according to her facial features. So it's about bias. It's about, the bias that is built into AI, which is something obviously that concerns all of us. So um, that's another shocker.
Yeah, thank you for that. That one hurts a little. Um, so I guess, yeah, so I don't want to say you're embracing AI, but it's definitely part of the conversation. It's like how it is impacting, um, both the singular object, but also, um, yeah, I mean, the question of truth, because from my perspective, an AI generated image is cannot be considered as being authentic, image or not. It's pulled, you can change so many elements in the image to create the story and the dynamic that you want. So I don't think it can be trusted. Like, is that fair?
I think no, I think it probably is fair. I think the problem is that you're going to be sent images where you don't know if they've been generated by AI. So therefore, you no longer know what to trust, um, which is a huge problem. I think artists concerned about photographers are very concerned about their work being replaced by AI. That's not something that I think will happen, to be honest with you. I'm not that concerned about that. But I do think if somebody's work is being scraped and then is being used as learning, ideally they would be paid for that, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. I had an artist on last year, and she was talking about how they were using the geographic metadata, and they were uploading JPEGs to Google Photos to make it searchable. So like if she needed to find photographs that she had shot in like Argentina, she was using the Google Photos, AI engine to like find, lifestyle photographs that you did in certain locations. And I think that it was really smart, but I am worried that Google has just taken everything that we have uploaded into their app and dumped it off to their engine, because they probably have been aware of this for much longer than it was in the public eye, and in the code saying, in our terms and conditions, we
Mm.
agree to signing off every single right to ingesting of images or not. I don't know because I haven't read it, but that's just what I suspect. um
No, I think it is very times are changing and there are massive issues of trust. I agree with you. And I think we do have to think about everything that we are sent, the news that we are sent that comes in to our phone. Can we trust it? Because it's no longer the case that we're sending journalists out to take photographs. It's often those photographs are coming from local people who happen to be there, but we don't know that. So yes, I think there are very concerning issues. I think the artists who are working with AI and using prompts, I don't find that particularly interesting. Um, just generating new images using prompts. Um, that's I don't know. I don't think that's not really art to me. That's just luck. Because you can't get the same image any time as well. So I think it's the randomness of it,
yeah.
which could be a wonderful coincidence, but might, I don't know. I'm not showing anyone who's doing that, for
Okay.
instance, because I don't think it's interesting. The prompt, you know, to me anyway.
Yeah. And then what, so how about like engagement for the festival in general with photographers? Like, do you have open calls that are
So we do. We have an open call that is running at the moment. We have it's through the Pictor platform, and we have amazing judges actually. Joel Meyerowitz is one of our judges um, from your neck of the woods, I think. Um, and this year, which what is particularly great is that the winners will have an exhibition at Modern Art Oxford, which
oh
is
wow.
the great contemporary gallery in Oxford. It's a long established, really important contemporary art space right in the middle of the city. And so we will, yeah, we'll have an exhibition there of the winners. So for them, I think to win that is, to have a show there is really prestigious.
Nice.
Um, so
How,
that's open now, actually, and it closes in May. And obviously, it's international, so anyone can apply. And if you're more local, we have a wonderful series of alternative process workshops running in the city. I don't know in the US, but I mean, certainly here there's a deep interest in alternative processes. So I think, yeah, that people just really are interested in these are all hands-on workshops, getting back to something that is pre-digital, actually. Um, Maybe as a result, I think, of concerns about AI and truth, people want to just make something themselves from scratch. So, um,
we were talking a little bit about the magical feeling of being in the dark room and seeing the photograph, materialize in front
yeah,
of you, and
yeah.
just that joy that first time when it's, or even, 100th time if you still get a kick out of it. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think that is something of the magic of photography, actually. And it's great for kids and it's great for everyone. I don't think you need to be a professional to kind of get that excitement from it. We're also doing a show about the surface of photography, um, where the image lies, actually, where the truth of the image actually sits, exploring from really early on daguerreotypes all the way through to the very contemporary, actually, and just considering where photographers have manipulated the surface, or say, do you know Richard Leroyd? He makes cameraless, beautiful cameraless prints, so that effectively there is no mediation between the subject and the print. It just passes through the lens, and I think that's also really interesting for people to think about photography itself, and where the image sits. If it sits in our heads or it sits, where it lies in a way. It's called surface tension, that one.
they sound like great exhibitions.
Good. You've got to come. You've got to come.
I'll see if I can pull it off.
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, we will be having also, because it is Oxford and there is an amazing kind of academic resource. And we have a wonderful relationship with the university. So one of the exhibitions will be in the Bodleian, which is the university library.
okay,
And it's one of the great libraries of the world. And the librarian is a huge supporter of photography, passionate about photography. And so we will have an exhibition there and a symposium, actually, an academic symposium. So
very
where we can
nice.
dig into these ideas kind of on a sort of meta level. I hope. I hope.
Are you doing any reviews?
We are having portfolio reviews, absolutely. A whole day of portfolio reviews. We haven't yet started to sell those, but those again, they'll be right in the middle of the city. Um, and a good range of reviewers. I always think with reviews, you've got to have someone who represents every different side of photography. So we have a wonderful gallerist, we have curators, we have photographers. So, I think hopefully those who come to the reviews can get the answers that they need or have the conversations that they want to have, I think.
Nice. And that'll all
Yeah.
be in person.
All in person.
Yeah.
Yes, all in person. We have a wonderful Egyptian artist who is working. They're part of there are many museums, as you would imagine, in Oxford. And there's a great museum called the Pitt Rivers, which I urge you all to look at. It's a Victorian collection, and it's still displayed as the original collection. So it's a sort of magical treasure trove of ethnography, really, and the history of people, the history of the world. But in recent years, there have been a lot of conversations about, you know, respecting these objects, their origins, whether it's appropriate to display them, returning them. And the director of that museum has been leading the charge on, giving some things back or working with the original people to return them, whatever. And this photographer, Sarah Salam, she is going to be looking at some of the original 19th century photographs of human remains, Egyptian human remains. So these would have been made by British archaeologists who would treat these human remains like any other object in this kind of indexical way, pay no heed really to the fact that these were human beings. And Sarah has already done this with other collections, and she's going to do some more in the Pitt Rivers. A way of cover. She's found a way of sort of covering these images and then writing about them as if written by the person, the dead person. And it's very beautiful and sensitive. And again, it's something about the truth of, what is this photograph for? Why are we looking at this photograph of this, poor dead person that becomes totally dehumanized. And she's sort of reburying these people. So that's another nice one, actually.
Another intense one.
Yes, it
Uh,
is. It is. And it brings up a lot of sort of interesting ethical questions, I think, which we should be raising.
what are some of the challenges for running a photo festival these days? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of them, but it's a regional event, right? Like, it's like there's one in Toronto, there's one in Chicago, it's like we actually don't have well, no, sorry, we've got um uh Photoville in New York, in Brooklyn, Quad Derby. Um, but yeah, I guess what are some of the main, I guess, roles as the director, and like what do you have to tackle on, like, to make make it a success?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, I'm finding, depending on where you are, obviously you need venues. So you need spaces. So I'm very jealous of some places where there's loads of wonderful kind of empty industrial units. That's like the dream. So I think Oxford doesn't have that. So space for me has been, a huge issue from the off. We have wonderful partners actually, but so building those relationships with spaces, and then obviously finding the money, not easy, not easy. And it certainly in Britain, the cultural sector is exceptionally depleted and underfunded. And
You're talking
so,
to an American right now, so I don't know if
um, yes, finding the resource is really difficult. In a very, in a, at a time when there are many people who are in terrible need, and we're fully aware of that. We're an extra. We're a wonderful thing, but we're not feeding people. So um, I'm conscious of that. Where I sit as a tiny charity. So I think space, money, and obviously I think it's really important for each festival to have its own identity as well. So people can immediately go, ah, Photo Oxford. Yeah, I know what that's like. I know the sorts of things they do. And I go to Oxford. I think we would like to be a grown-up festival, you know, because we're in a very grown-up place, actually. And we don't have industrial, unfortunately, loads of, industrial buildings to fill full of things. So we're bijou.
Very
And I
posh.
do think the other thing is I have a great board of trustees. I have great support. I think it is just a massive team effort. Although driven by me, it's I have wonderful people helping. So
Would you like to have a physical permanent space?
I think it would be great in Oxford to have a little space that was always about photography, because Oxford has many wonderful people who are really engaged. So I've become, really involved with there's a big photographic community, and it would be wonderful to have a little space where people could show their work, could gather, share books. It's really a city of the book most of all, and but not a big space, not a museum, not a collection. No one, that's a whole other ball game. But yes, if someone offered me a little space, I'd be delighted to offer it to, photographers from across the world actually to
Yeah.
gather in Oxford.
Well, hopefully someone will hear the call. Because I think isn't Katona on the Move, wasn't it a festival that is now like in a permanent space in Italy? Do you
I,
know them?
I do know them. I think that's right. They're no longer on the move. They've stopped moving.
Exactly. Just Katona now.
Just Cortona. Yes, no, I think you're right. Maybe they have stopped moving. I mean, Photo Oxford will always only ever be in Oxford. So that makes it easier. Although I mean, Oxford is a big city, and I'm hoping to go out of the centre as well, and put some work in the streets. I'm also trying to get an exhibition in some public loos, toilets. You don't
Thank
say
you for
loos, do you?
translating for the rest.
Public toilets. I've been offered this extraordinary body of work that was made by a photographer in the 1980s working for lawyers who were defending gay men who were being wrongfully accused of cottaging by the police. So they'd be sort of set up and then accused of cottaging. And this
What is
photographer was
cottaging?
part of the defense team taking photographs in these loos as evidence that accusations were false and that these things couldn't have happened. And so they're sort of photographs of toilets, but they tell you about gay history and the law and how photography can be used as evidence. So I've pitched it to the city loos, but I haven't heard back yet.
I love it. So is cottaging like trying to, is it like it, uh
So sorry. So cottaging would be where gay men would basically hook up in loos.
okay. Okay.
It was because here in the 1980s, this was particularly during the AIDS crisis. There was a massive, backlash against kind of gay people, gay behavior, and everything was hidden.
I think it's another great show. I love your ideas, I gotta tell you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so okay, so we've covered bathrooms, pop-up space. Um, you need a gallery. You're already having a show in the library. You've got a gallery that you're working with. Um,
I've got lots of other shows as well. I
even
have,
more. How many
I
shows
do,
are you gonna have total?
I'm going to have about 10 shows, I think.
Okay.
About 10 shows. I think that's sufficient. Because obviously, as well as there are portfolio reviews, there'll be an academic symposium, and I hope there might be at least one really wonderful book launch, and a gathering to talk about books. because you can't really have a festival and not talk about books. Books really matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about 10 shows. I mean, probably the most, in a way, the sort of foundational show is by, I don't know if you know her, she's a South African photographer called Gillian Edelstein. Um, and she photographed the Truth and Reconciliation hearings in South Africa at the end of apartheid.
Oh, wow.
And she photographed the victims and the perpetrators and recorded their stories. And she made this extraordinary body of work called Truth and Lies. And we will be showing vintage prints, a large proportion of that body of work. Which is another, incredibly important truth that needs to be remembered, I think, particularly now.
Yeah. There are some forces that are trying to erase um, some of that history.
I fear so.
Yeah.
So yes, Gillian was there. She's, taken people's, recorded them. Their stories will be there. Although I mean, it is quite difficult material, so we'll have to be quite careful about the stories that we tell. But I think it's really important.
Yeah. What is
So
that
yeah,
like? How would you put up like a disclaimer at the door, just that some of the material might not be suitable, or
yeah, I think that's exactly what we will do. I think we will say, please be aware that some of the stories here could be upsetting, I
yeah.
think. Um,
And then it's up
yeah, I
to the
mean,
viewer, the parent.
exactly. Yeah, I'm in quite a few shows I've done. We've ended up doing that. And nobody ever minds. I think it's just important to give people the opportunity to consider if they're, in the mood maybe to encounter that material. Or they might be, it could be incredibly upsetting. So, um, yeah.
Is there a dream exhibition or project? Maybe not for October for this generation edition of the festival, but is there something you would love to get in the future?
The thing I wanted, my dream, I wanted to show Nan Goldin's Ballad of Sexual Dependency, the tape slideshow, which is now a digital version. And I wrote to her, because to me that is perfect truth. Um, and I was desperate to show it. I'm still desperate to show it, but I never heard back. I wrote to her twice. I never heard back. Because for me, that's one of the things I saw that made me turn my career towards photography. Um, Going into a room, not knowing what it was, sitting down and just thinking, yeah, this is something I wanted to understand. And this moves me as well. I think it's for me, it's a deeply moving piece of work. So yeah, there you go. If you know her, could you put it in a word for me, maybe?
Trying to think of her friends on Facebook. Might have been a fake one. Might have been her. um, I'll see what I can do. No
That's
promises.
very kind. That's very, very kind. I can offer you a free portfolio review, you know?
Now I'm really gonna try. Um,
Yeah, I mean we have a lot of volunteers, so all of our exhibitions, or they're all free. I should say, I think that's incredibly important. Not they're free because I want everyone to come. We're starting to do some work with some local community groups, in the hope that ultimately they'll come to these exhibitions and feel that they're welcome, actually. And so everything will be free and everything has to be invigilated. So we have to have custodians, and those are all volunteers. So there's a huge kind of groundswell of support, actually, from people who come and are prepared to sit in the show and talk to the visitors. And one of the things I do in return is anyone who wants a portfolio review with me can have one if they'll be an invigilator. So that's the thing I can offer.
That's fair. I think that's, consultation with you or portfolio review in exchange for helping out. I think that's good. I had there was a non-for-profit that it was having a benefit, and that was one of the ways that they were thanking the artists, is that it's like if you donate a piece of work, we'll get you a portfolio review. And they had like a bunch of connections at museums and curators and collectors in the city. And it's just like this, this is great because a lot of times I get the request, it's like we need your work, but we're not going to pay you, and we're not even going to invite you to the party. Um, so I was very happy when they did that. They unfortunately never delivered, but I liked the idea.
I mean, I honestly, people keep saying you should do a print sale, do an auction. But I mean, I have so many friends who are photographers, like deep, close friends, and I feel they're always being asked to give their work for free, and it's not fair. And I don't really want to do that, to be honest with you, for exactly the reasons that you've just said. Why should you keep giving your work away? It's your living. How else are you supposed to live? So I'm at this. I mean, I'm not desperate yet. I'm not doing an auction.
I have had a couple of them actually split the commission as if it was a gallery sale. So when they made money, the artist made money. And that worked.
That's much fairer. That's
Yeah.
much fair. Yeah.
There was one where they sold almost $40,000 worth of work. And my gallery had agreed to do it because it was a collector that they had as a client, and they kind of did it as a like, thank you slash favor. So, they were a little miffed in the end because they thought that they were just donating, like, cutting like one or two sales, and it ended up, being pretty big. But these were all people that were never going to come to the gallery in the city. It was like it was another place, and yeah, you know, I got a bunch of new collectors, kept their existing one happy. Um,
Okay. So it worked for you actually.
it worked for me. I have had, a couple of situations where they've like wanted the work though, but then don't want us to show up at the gala.
Wow.
Like, oh, the catering, the space. And I'm just like, no, no, you're buying me dinner if you're getting a print out of this.
Quite right. Yeah. No, I think artists need to get paid. I mean, all our exhibiting artists in the festival will be paid. Um, yeah, I think that has, I mean, unfortunately not very much, but they will be paid something because they must be paid. I mean, how else is anyone supposed to live and work as an artist? Otherwise it's only for elite people. It becomes impossible.
It's that constant, like, a little bit of the carrot saying like we can't pay you, but it's the exposure. It's like you get this show, and that will get you sales, or that will get you representation somewhere else and with somebody else. And it's like I have, that I'm always balancing a little bit of like it's also marketing. It's like if I have a piece in one of these benefits, it's an excuse to send an e-blast out. It's a reason to be posting saying, hey, my work is available at the X, Y, and Z benefit. Um, but I don't want to be excluded from the access either, because part of it for me, it's like, at the cocktail hour, being able to like say, hey, that's my work. Oh wow, you're a publicist, you're a writer, um,
Yes, if you're not allowed to be there, then I think that's pretty uncool,
yeah,
actually. But well, I think it's very nice that you're prepared to give your work to benefits. That's all I can say.
thank you.
It's very
The
generous.
the way that I worked it out is that I have one image that is a larger edition of a 16 by 20 print, and that's the piece that is like designated for benefit shows.
So
And
you
there's
just
like
give that one to, is it editioned?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you just give and one from the edition, that's your benefit piece.
Yeah. So like if you want a photograph from like my artificial reef series, it is this image. It's a 16 by 20 print, digital C, signed and numbered on the back like the rest of them. Street value is, $600. And we can set the auction price, whatever you think is a good starting point for you.
Mm.
Um,
That's what you're getting.
that's what you're getting.
So there's no choice, which is, yeah, I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. I just bought actually, do you know there's an artist called Karen Knorr? And she made an edition of 10, a little edition of 10, and it was sold to benefit. She made it herself, and it was sold to benefit the LA firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, I think it was £200. And I'd always loved her work. And like a big proper print would be thousands, which I don't have. But this was gorgeous. And it was like everybody wins. So I could see doing something a bit like that could work.
Yeah.
Um, maybe.
Yeah.
We have a friends program, £40. You get discounts and love. And then we've just started a patrons program, which is a serious amount of money. And you get amazing access to, collections and curators and artists and stuff like that. And I think there's an appetite for that. I'm hoping there's an appetite for that. So these are all ways to sort of raise funds before I have to go begging to the artists, basically.
Thank you. So who would you recommend? Like, who's going to benefit the most by coming to the festival? Like, oh, I guess what level of, the photo enthusiasts? Like, do you want professionals there? Do you want students? Like, who's the target audience?
That's a really good question. I think there is a number of audiences. I mean, there's obviously the Oxford audience itself, and Oxford is an exceptionally diverse city. We have in the centre this sort of extraordinary university, but as I said to you, it's an industrial city with a very rich heritage. So my audience, I hope, are people who live in the city, not just in the centre as well. I hope photographers, photography enthusiasts, certainly students as well. Um, and I think the question of truth hopefully will kind of reach a lot of people, and will attract a really wide range of people, perhaps even beyond photography. It's almost philosophical, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the big question right now is
Yeah.
what do you believe?
What can you believe?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think photographically it's a very urgent. So
There was a story in the New York Times, I think last week, just talking about the resurgence of photography because of AI, because the photographic print feels that it is truth. It's the object that, even though we know that they can be manipulated, um, I think that most of the time you can't really do it well enough to fake people. I mean, there's skilled retouchers out there, absolutely, that can fake the truth, but like, and there's ways to photograph. There was an image circulating where it was showing like a line lined up of people, and I can't remember if they were there for protesting or for a food bank or voting, but shot with the telephoto lens versus the wide angle lens, and making it, just changing that changes the information in the picture. And it was an interesting, conversation about, like the two different news outlets shooting the same photograph, but because of the photographer or the editor or whatever, you know, they went with this image to, communicate that aspect of the story of it
totally
either being
different.
sparse or really well attended in a long line,
But
like,
also, it's something color versus black and white. You put the people into black and white, and it suddenly becomes a tragedy. It becomes something about history, or you immediately think of other images that you've seen. Um, if you do stuff like that, and I mean, in a way, though, photography has always been manipulated. There is no photographic truth long before, the digital came along. And I think that's the thing that people forget as well, is, the fact this has always taken place. And suddenly now we're on shaky ground. Before we could believe, and now we can't. And why did we believe it before? I don't know. I mean, we accepted it before, and now we don't
Yeah.
as well. So, I mean, I don't even know if you're real, Stephen.
Close enough. This is so much fun. We have been, we're already, yeah, it's 3:50. We've been, like I was telling you, like sometimes we're getting close to the end. So, is there anything else that we didn't discuss that you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of Photo Oxford. We've talked about the truth. We're excited about photography. I think we're still excited about photography and passionate about it, despite everything. Um, I think, I mean, certainly in the UK, there's a huge appetite for photography.
Okay.
So I think long may that continue. And I would love to welcome you to Oxford.
Thank you. Well, Katie, I hope I can make it.
That would be
Uh,
great.
well, Katie, thank you so much for this. This has been so much fun. I'm really glad we got a chance to connect and talk about it. And I'm sure the festival is going to be amazing.
Thank you. And well, you can sign up for our newsletter, it's Photo Oxford, and see all the exciting things that we're planning.
Sounds
And
good.
thank you so much. It's
Thank
lovely to
you.
meet you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.